Afternoon. Today we will be looking at WH questions for completed actions. Let's start by talking about the simple past, because the simple past is used for completed actions. We know that sentences have a subject, a verb, and some extra information. For example, Jake worked in a big cafe at 5 p.m. Here the subject is Jake, the verb is worked. In a big cafe is extra information for place. At 5 p.m. is extra information for time. Now, we must also remember that regular simple past tense verbs have a verb plus ed form. For example, work, worked, a work plus ed. And irregular simple past tense verbs have different spelling. For example, make and made. Made is a simple past tense form. Another example is do and did, or go and went. Let's look at WH words now. We have 6 WH words. These are how, when, why, who, what, and where. We use how for manner. How did you come to school? By car. We use when for time. When did you study? At 5 p.m. We use why for reason. Why did you study? Just because. We use who for person. Who met you? She met me. We use what for thing. What did you study? I studied it. And we use where for place. Where did you go? I went on 8th Street. Okay, let's look now at examples. Let's start by making a question about the place. So, Jake worked at 5 p.m., but I don't know the place. So I need to start by adding a do auxiliary. Now the do auxiliary will absorb the tense from the verb. So Jake worked at 5 p.m. Okay, if I add do, the ed is absorbed by the verb, by the auxiliary, and do becomes did. So Jake worked at 5. Did Jake work at 5 p.m.? Now, because I want to ask a question about place, I need a WH word. The WH word for place is where. So, where did Jake work at 5 p.m.? The answer? In a big cafe. Let's look at another example. Now I'm going to make an example about time. Jake worked in a big cafe, but I don't know the time. I want to know the time. So, first I'm going to add the do auxiliary before the subject. But remember that do absorbs the tense. So, Jake worked in a big cafe. Did Jake work in a big cafe? Ed is absorbed by the do auxiliary, and do becomes did. Did Jake work in a big cafe? Next, because I want to know the time, I need to add a WH word for time. The WH word for time is when. So the question is, when did Jake work in a big cafe? Answer, at 5 p.m. Now, let's just say I don't know the verb. I don't know the action. So I know Jake in a big cafe at 5 p.m., but I don't know the verb. So again, I need to add the do auxiliary. Okay, and again, do will receive the tense, so did. Next, because I don't know the verb, I add do in the verb position. And because I want to know what the verb is, I add a WH word. The WH word for verbs is what. So my question is, what did Jake do in a big cafe? Answer, worked. Now let's look at subject questions. After all of this, we know we need to add do. However, if I am asking who the subject is, I don't need do. I only need to change the subject into who. So I know worked in a big cafe at 5 p.m., but I don't know the subject. I want to know the person. So all I do is just add who in the subject position. Who worked in a big cafe at 5 p.m.? The answer? Jake did. Let's look at more examples now. Let's look at another example. Once again, we know that sentences have a subject, a verb, and extra information. Here's my sentence. Jake helped Janet Kim yesterday. Jake is the subject, helped is the verb, Janet Kim is extra information for an object person, and yesterday is extra information for time. Let's make a question about the object of the sentence, that is Janet. Okay, so Jake helped yesterday, but I want to know the object person. Well, once again, first I add do. And again, do is going to absorb the tense. So Jake helped yesterday. I add do. The ed is absorbed by do, and it becomes did. So did Jake help yesterday? But I want to know the object person, so I need a WH word. The WH word for person is who. Who did Jake help yesterday? Who did Jake help yesterday? Answer, Janet. Let's look at another example now for time. Alright, so Jake helped Janet Kim, but I don't know the time. So once again, I add the do auxiliary. And remember that when I add the do auxiliary, the ed will be absorbed by do. So Jake helped Janet Kim. Add do. Did Jake help Janet Kim? And do becomes did. Now, because I want to know the time, I need a WH word for time. The WH word for time is when. When did Jake help Janet Kim? When did Jake help Janet Kim? Yesterday. Lastly, I don't know the subject. So I know somebody helped Janet Kim yesterday, but I don't know the subject. And once again, if I am asking who the subject is, I don't need to add do. I only need to change the subject into who. So, who helped Janet Kim? Answer, Jake did. Well, this concludes my presentation. If you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns, please email me. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in class.